Welcome to my channel, Veterans Legacy. Today's story will move your heart, remind you of the price of honor, and show you what true courage really means. So sit back, turn up the volume, and let this story unfold, a story that silenced an entire courtroom. The courtroom was packed that morning. People whispered among themselves, their eyes darting between the accused and the judge. On the defendant's side sat an old man in a faded military jacket, his gray hair neatly combed, his hands trembling slightly on the wooden table before him. His name was Walter Briggs, a Vietnam veteran. To most people in that courtroom, he looked like any other aging man, maybe even a bit lost. His jacket bore patches long faded by sun and time, medals that barely caught the light anymore. But behind those calm, tired eyes lay memories of battles few could even imagine. Walter wasn't there for a crime of violence. He'd been arrested for defending a young woman outside a store, when a group of local punks had mocked her and shoved her around. Walter stepped in, told them to back off. One of them pushed him, called him old trash, and he fought back. He didn't hit first, but when he did, it was over in seconds. 3 young men on the ground, one with a broken wrist. The police came, saw the scene, and saw only one thing: an old man standing over 3 injured kids. Now, weeks later, he sat before the court, charged with assault and excessive force. The judge, Richard Coleman, was a man known for his sharp tongue and even sharper sense of superiority. He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing at Walter. "Mr. Briggs," he said, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "You claim you were defending someone. But from what I see, you went far beyond defense. You left those boys in the hospital. Is that your idea of courage?" Walter didn't respond. "Tell me," the judge continued, leaning back in his chair, "what kind of man fights children? What kind of veteran are you, to think your war days justify this kind of behavior?" A quiet hush fell over the room. Even the air felt heavy. Walter's attorney whispered, "Don't react, sir. Please." But Walter simply looked up at the judge. His gaze wasn't angry. It was disappointed. "Sir," he said softly, "I didn't mean to hurt them. I was just protecting that girl." The judge scoffed. "Protecting her? You think you're still in combat, soldier? This isn't your battlefield. Those boys said you were shouting orders, like you were back in a war zone. Sounds more like a coward trying to relive his glory days to me." The word coward hung in the air like poison. Everyone in the courtroom stared at Walter. Some smirked, others whispered. The bailiff shifted uncomfortably. Walter's lawyer put a hand on his shoulder, but Walter slowly stood up. "Permission to speak freely, Your Honor," he said quietly. Judge Coleman frowned. "You may." Walter took a deep breath. His voice shook at first, but as he spoke, it grew stronger. "I served this country for 22 years. I lost more brothers than I can count. I've seen men die in the dirt, in the rain, calling out for their mothers. And I've seen real cowards too, men who ran when the bullets started flying." He paused, his eyes locked on the judge's. "But I also learned something. Cowardice isn't about running from bullets. It's about turning away from what's right because it's inconvenient. That girl out there, she was alone. Nobody helped her. Everyone stood by, watching, filming on their phones. And I'm the coward because I stepped in." The courtroom was dead silent. Even the judge didn't speak. Then Walter said quietly, almost as if to himself, "I've heard that word before." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Oh, from whom?" Walter looked straight at him, and said a name that made the judge's face go pale. He whispered, "Eagle 2-1. The room froze. The judge's gavel slipped slightly in his hand. His eyes widened, color draining from his face. "What did you say?" he asked, his voice suddenly trembling. Walter didn't move. "You heard me, sir. Eagle 2-1. That was your call sign, wasn't it? 5th Special Forces Group, and Lao Valley, 1970. A few people looked around, confused. But the judge, the proud, stern Judge Coleman, looked like he'd just seen a ghost. He swallowed hard. "How do you?" Walter stepped closer. "You were pinned down in the valley. You lost 3 men. You called for extraction, but the jungle was too thick, too hot with fire. You thought you weren't getting out. You remember the voice that came over the radio, telling you to hold tight. That was me. Call sign Ghost Falcon." The judge's lips parted slightly, his hand shaking as he reached for the bench. He whispered, I thought Ghost Falcon didn't make it. Walter smiled faintly. Most didn't, but I made sure you got out, sir. My unit stayed behind so your chopper could lift off. We took heavy fire. I lost my best friend that night. For a moment, the courtroom didn't exist. It was just two old soldiers, one in uniform, one in robes, reliving a war long past but never forgotten. The judge slowly stood up, his face softening. You're Sergeant Briggs. Yes, sir. Judge Coleman stepped down from the bench. He didn't look like a judge anymore, just a man humbled by the past. He stood before Walter and whispered, You saved my life. Walter nodded. That was my job, sir. Always was. The judge's eyes glistened. He turned to the courtroom. Case dismissed. Gasps rippled through the audience. After the gavel fell, the judge walked over to Walter and extended his hand, then hesitated, as if that wasn't enough. Instead, he raised his hand in a crisp salute. Every single person in that courtroom stood up instinctively. Even the bailiff, even the kids in the back who had been laughing earlier, they all stood silently as the old veteran saluted back. For a long, breathless moment, the two men stood facing each other, one who had once given the order, and one who had obeyed it without question, decades ago in a place half a world away. Then the judge leaned close and whispered, I called you a coward. I'm the one who should be ashamed. Walter smiled gently. We all carry things, sir. Some heavier than others. The judge nodded, his voice breaking slightly. You didn't just save me back then. You saved me again today. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed Walter, asking how he knew the judge, what the call sign meant. He just smiled and said, Old soldiers never really stop serving. We just change battlefields. He didn't wait for interviews or cameras. He just walked down the steps slowly, the same steady stride of a man who had faced storms and lived to tell about them. The young woman he'd protected that day was waiting near the sidewalk. She ran up and hugged him tightly, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, she said. If it wasn't for you. Walter stopped her with a soft smile. Don't apologize for being alive. Just make it mean something. That night, Judge Coleman sat alone in his office long after everyone had gone. On his desk lay an old, folded photograph, 5 soldiers, smiling, covered in mud. On the back of the photo, faded ink read, To Eagle 2-1, hold the line. Ghost Falcon, 1970. He picked up his pen and wrote another line beneath it. He still does. And somewhere across town, Walter Briggs sat on his porch, watching the sunset. The metal around his neck caught the dying light. He looked at it for a long time before setting it down beside him. He whispered, Rest easy, boys. We're still watching over things. The wind rustled softly through the trees, like voices carried on the air, voices of men long gone, but never forgotten. So if you ever see a veteran sitting quietly in a courtroom, or sweeping floors, or fixing something broken, remember this. You're looking at someone who once stood between chaos and safety. Someone who gave up his peace so we could have ours. And maybe, just maybe, the quietest man in the room has the loudest story to tell.